space is a location when someone is enacting, when someone is making sense of it, when someone is narrating, when someone is doing something. So space is
an environment, closed or open, inside or outside, where action takes place.
from that perspective a more performative approach to space. Space is what I make it.
We look at it, our ears, our eyes. Even if you don't use that space, if you look at it there, it exists in your mind.
An environment itself doesn't define the space. If the actions become memory, depending on the individual sensibility, it becomes a place. Space is rare. Space is extremely valuable. It's a lack of space. Everybody, every entity, every agency will say space it's a luxury.
You have thousands of people cramping with each other. It seems it's normal, it's our norm, but it's not the norm for most other cities in this world.
I started to treasure the small space we could afford, even if it's not big. It's good to look at how we can deal with it creatively instead of complaining we don't have enough.
In the same time, because of this particular aspect of dense situation, space has been manipulated and invented new typology, new layer of experience. They are existing, they have been invented.
I may not be that extreme to say Hong Kong is developing against people, but I'm confident to say Hong Kong is developing without regard to people.
I think there's a different value of space in Hong Kong, and that of course has to do with time. Basically, time is a good friend of space, particularly in Hong Kong. I think time really animates the space. It asks for the space, it demands space, it consumes space. Basically, it's ahead of space.
Hong Kong's just rise up within 20th century, even after World War II. Within 30, 40 years, you have this city shoot out really from nowhere, from barren rocks.
Because you think that in Hong Kong is a city without memory, a city without history.
But precisely that's the fatal weakness, I believe, of Hong Kong. And that's the underground root of the space of Hong Kong, precisely rootless.
There's not a single book of history of Hong Kong architecture. Basically, there's not enough research from the several universities in Hong Kong about these things, or the history of Hong Kong city or urban development.
Hong Kong is a present continuous tense. In Hong Kong, there is hardly future tense, not even past tense. Everything is present. Everything is discounted into present. Everything is short-term or spontaneous. That's our strength, but exactly, it's our fatal weakness.
when we were little and in this public housing estate, we did enjoy to make our space by opening our doors, and then all of a sudden the communal space also became your own space. You extend it to the corridor, you extend it to the staircases, you extend it downstairs, you extend it to the playgrounds, or you don't really need to define them, and it's kind of unlimited.
Very often in academics or in the government, when you talk about space, you sterilize it into that objective, neutral space, the physical quality. So often people miss out one crucial aspect about spaces. If there is no people involved or associated with that space, that's not really space in a city in this sense.
When you see the old parts of the city, street life is really, essential to residential area. But now you don't have any street life in those new developments.
In the 60s, people know almost each other, not just your neighbors, all in the same street. People know at least 100 people around their homes. Now I would say no more than 10. Everyone becomes so much isolated, so lonely. Yeah, the space, in a sense, is a container, but it's also a facilitator, or it's a force in itself to make people being broken apart. In sociology, we call that atomic society. The government privatized all the commercial properties of all public housing in Hong Kong and put them into that trust, the Link. And the Link, after being listed, they executed very fierce privatization, or everything they aim is to achieve higher return, higher profit. And one consequence is to squeeze out all these old small shops.
I would just imagine the community just would be much better if they did something more considerate.
People are not happy, but what can you do? Everything is carried out legally. On one hand, all of them are legal. On the other, all of them are in line with our business philosophy to make the most.
Space, or living space here is not only simple issues of living space, it's also about that monetary, ideas behind, it's an investment, it's money, and it's value.
Hong Kong really endorses and embraces the free market idea. In this sense, Hong Kong is even much more capitalistic than London and New York and Tokyo. The central philosophy of Hong Kong is to profit, very materialistic, and also very secular. Space in Hong Kong has no place in itself, has a very low position in terms of quality of life, and space is a means to make money. In theory, you can transmit, I believe, more than 60% or even 80% of all the wealth of Hong Kong to elsewhere in 1 hour.
Hong Kong people regard themselves as residents in Hong Kong, not as citizens. The sense of belonging to Hong Kong has always been very unique, or also very delicate, and in a way, it's not deeply rooted.
Just take a look at our elites here, our political, business, and academic elites. More than 80% of them have non-Hong Kong passports, and our elites can just take a plane and fly back to their to another of their country of residence or nationality. This happened in the SARS event. So Hong Kong is very fragile. It's in fact one of the most fragile cities of the world. Before the World War II, the British did not really pay that much attention to planning and architecture. Yeah, but after the World War II, because of the population explosion from, let's say, 1 million to 3 million in less than 20 years, one of the most impressive population growth in human history, you have to regulate them. It's simply a matter of necessity.
One of the major factors is the people that came to Hong Kong are migrants from China. They are the strong one. They're not the one that stay. They are the one that are pushing. They are the one that take risks and so on.
And then you come out to have this quite impressive mix between the British institutions and our population here. The city is the hardware, is the computer. The British can influence the computer's hardware, but the program running the computers are still essentially Chinese. The program itself is simply the Chinese people. In many cases, they counter to the British rules and institutions by the Chinese conception. That's how Hong Kong is a very peculiar, but also a very successful mix between British planning, Hong Kong's urban planning and traffic and architecture. In that sense, the rules, the laws are all black and white British.
I think in 99% of the cities away from Hong Kong, even if you talk about very vigorous cities like New York or London, when architects, if they're asked to make a building, they presume that they're going to make something permanent. But in Hong Kong, I think more or less the architects know that their buildings are going to be demolished in 20, 30 years' time.
In terms of academic publication, it's really difficult to explain, to address this uniqueness or the speciality of Hong Kong for the Western audience. The British did not do anything under the term laissez-faire, that French term, leave them alone. Leave them alone. They knew this evil consequence of capitalism very well, but they leave Hong Kong alone.
It's a political plot by the British to secure the masses. The new migrant from China, they have to work first, and then if they have a bit of free time, they have to consume. Let's provide them public housing, space for consumption, commercial center.
Every Western state came up or had to face this challenge, this problem, and came up with other non-market, non-business values and forces, at least to safeguard humanity. Not in Hong Kong.
you have heard about all these stories and resistance and movements saying save the heritage, talking about preservation, conservation, and so on. I think in Hong Kong, people really should not take so directly the Western, modern, the very European perception of what is the heritage and what is the city and how do you deal with it. I think there's a very unique Hong Kong cultural understanding of space.
I think there's no ideal space, but there's always idealism, picking up forces, turning people into active agents, because we are upholding that kind of unfulfilled spatial practice.
I think that we should look deeper and then find our own way. We should be more inclusive in finding solution, not at the two extremes. One is the total conservatism and then the government approach of total renewal strategy. So there's something in between, and we've done it somewhere.
Public space do not born like that. It's something that you create, and it's created by usually government or public agency, by private agency. I don't think that there is a reduction of social space. It's just that the social space does not necessarily happen within a qualified public space. It has been a lot transferred to a so-called private space.
Nor do I think that the binary of the private and the public is that productive.
One characteristic I will say about space in Hong Kong, it's its ability to multiply or to layer itself, either through cross-programmation or temporal programmation. Let's talk about this space. Tonight is a space where we can sit and chat, but tomorrow morning we put a machine in the middle and workers come and do meeting. On the evening it becomes a school, and on the night it becomes a dormitory.
But I think there's something new that we have to discover, that we have to dig deeper rather than just standing on either side, the government or the other.
The other approach to multi-layered is basically, okay, this floor is for housing, this floor is for karaoke, this floor is for snooker, this floor is for factory, this one is for restaurant, within the same building. That's what we call multi-programmation. And that happened in Hong Kong, and it's still happening in Hong Kong.
So making space here means within a certain set of preambles, I can self-consciously play with some of the rules that is given into my hands and multiply its value or to subvert it.
In fact, Hong Kong is not totally rootless. Our root is still very young and very weak. The Star Ferry and the Queen's Pier events precisely reflect this root of our younger population's love for Hong Kong.
Personally, I don't see identity as something given. I think we all create our own identity in a way not to stress this identity. I take more like an anthropological approach. Whenever you have people living together, there must be culture. And even you don't really talk about that, it's there.
A very limited number of group of people, and also colleagues or people with authority who are delimiting my space, delimiting my free-flowing thoughts, etc. I felt I have this drive of being able to connect myself to the rest of the world by even just being on the internet to get in touch with something.
For a subversive mind, which I guess we belong to, there is always a way to escape.
This is the space, not only physical space, but with that more space, you feel more comfortable to move around, and that kind of little freedom may give you more possibilities in terms of thinking or concepts.
And the effect of being able to assemble should not be undermined, because that is the beginning of exchanging conversations, questioning, coming up with new ideas, shaping an identity, but this is now gradually diminishing.
One generation of people cannot build a big city, a great city. In fact, it takes generations, very often hundreds of years, to make up a great city.
Fiction refers to our imaginary space. So how we project, the imaginary side of us is as real as the rational side.